to another edition of the Hope Dems podcast, where we bring you information, politics, and issues that affect all of our residents here and voters here in Hope County. I'm joined by my co-host, Tyson Moy, and tonight we have a special guest. I tell you, we've been very, very blessed to have some incredible guests. We have Braxton Winston from Mecklenburg County, who is running to be the North Carolina's next Commissioner of Labor. So it's super happy to have you on here, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm pleased to be here. I look forward to getting out to Hope County soon.
All day, man. Yeah, we're gonna see you on the court, man. So we're looking forward to that, man. For sure. Tyson, man, got any words? Tyson and I are NFC East rivals. So I'm an Eagles fan and he's a Cowboys fan. And so we get along, and everything else. But when it comes to football, we're rivals. So
G-Man all day.
At all three.
Oh, man.
Lives another day. But I know you're both shaking in your boots because Ezekiel Elliott is coming back to the Dallas Cowboys. So, pretty much ready to go. Paying the man twice.
The Ewok is going to see what he can do once again.
Just don't mess with it. It's not broken.
Man, this is going to be great. Great. Oh, man. Again, let's just jump right into it. We've had a good labor week, and I've got a couple of questions up here, but we generally get into the flow and just roll with things. We know that North Carolina has really positioned this year to push our candidates forward. We are the best candidates. We have the best ideas. We have the momentum, and we're going to be pushing forward and letting voters know what kind of future that we want. I think, the other side is really trying to figure out how they can hurt people and set folk back. And I think we have a unique opportunity in Hope County in North Carolina to figure out how it is that we create a future that's good for everyone, especially our workers. So jump right into it, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and how you got to this point in your life.
Well, absolutely. Well, I'm probably not your traditional candidate for Commissioner of Labor, at least not recently. I was born in Camp Lejeune to a father who's a retired Marine. He also retired from the Air Force, and he's still at 64 years old riding around on a fire truck, saving folk. My mother's a retired high school math teacher, and after I graduated from Davidson College, I started a career as a union stagehand, so working on rock and roll shows, Broadway shows, conventions. I've been a camera operator for the Charlotte Hornets for 20 seasons, and I work on film and television sets. Actually, that's why I have, these microphones and earpieces hanging from my neck right now. I'm actually working on a film set right now in Catawba County as we speak. So I certainly understand, the challenges that working families all across North Carolina face day to day. I'm a guy that still clocks in and clocks out. So, what a novel idea to have a worker as the lead advocate for workers all across the state. And, that experience combined with being on Charlotte City Council for 6 years, being elected 3 times and serving as mayor pro, the number one state for businesses and workers, right? Those two ideas shouldn't be and aren't mutually exclusive. We have recently consistently ranked at the top when it comes to the best state to come and start a business or run a business, but we consistently rank at the bottom for the conditions of workers. If you're a woman at work in North Carolina, we rank 52 out of 52 behind Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. So, the reason why I think we're such a great business state is because we have one of the most robust, one of the most educated, and one of the most diverse and resilient workforces of any state anywhere, able to survive many different shocks to industry changes. But that's because we've invested in our people over generations. And we stopped doing that as of recent, and we should not take our economic trajectory for granted. Businesses won't keep setting up here if our workforce doesn't continue to be as strong and resilient as possible. So that's why I started to do this. I'm sorry I can go into this. I can talk about this all night uninterrupted, but that's really the gist of it.
No, go in. Tyson, man, I think you have a follow-up for him.
Wow, heck of a stump speech. I'm inspired. So I hope now you could explain to our listeners exactly what the Commissioner of Labor does and then how your leadership as our next Commissioner of Labor is going to improve a lot of workers in our state and our state overall.
Yeah, well, the Commissioner of Labor is one of 10 Council of State positions that makes up the executive branch of our government. In our form of democracy, you have three co-equal branches: the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive branch. So, this and all the other statewide positions are so important, especially in a state that is so gerrymandered, where it is very difficult to get the laws that we want passed. But you can't gerrymander a whole state, right? And the executive branch interprets, implements, and executes the laws. And so we need good people in our Council of State positions. The Commissioner of Labor, particularly, is the chief executive of the North Carolina Department of Labor, with the responsibility of administering Chapter 95 of the North Carolina Code, which is all of our state's labor laws. So it ensures that all workers get paid fairly under North Carolina state laws. It ensures that work is done in safe and healthy conditions wherever work gets done, and that workers aren't retaliated against for standing up for themselves under the law. And there's a bunch of other public safety aspects to this. You remember there was about a year ago, there was a video of a roller coaster that was broken down in my neck of the woods in Charlotte at Carowinds. Well, every roller coaster, every elevator, every ski lift, every ADA lift, every time there's a workplace accident or workplace death or a report of unhealthy or safe condition, that has to be investigated or inspected by a safety compliance officer at the North Carolina Department of Labor. And currently, 1 in 4 of those positions goes unfilled. So that I don't know about you guys, but that gives me anxiety that the important public safety job isn't being done on time every time. And this isn't just about workers. Safety compliance is very important for businesses to run, right? Especially large corporations spend a lot of money on that. But small businesses in particular rely on the Department of Labor for the tools that they need to understand and execute the rules and laws of under safety compliance. And you don't have a responsive Department of Labor, you're setting your small businesses in particular up to make it more difficult to be competitive should something go wrong.
Ooh, absolutely. Now that's powerful. Tell me about your experience on Charlotte City Council and how has that prepared you for the space that you're in now?
Oh, that's a great question. So I was elected first in 2017 to Charlotte City Council as an at-large member, and I was reelected 3 times and was chosen by my colleagues to be mayor pro tem. I really came to understand on City Council. We did a lot of good stuff, and I was proud about my kind of policy resume there. But it became very clear that in order to get more stuff done, we need more coalitions of communities that understand what cities need, what towns need, and that are working together in collaboration to give municipalities, to give counties the tools they need. And I saw that a lot of stuff was getting held up because there wasn't that coalition building up in Raleigh. Everybody is very kind of guided by individual needs and isn't making those kind of building those relationships between communities, not just communities that are close by, but across the state, for folks to understand that what's good for one part of North Carolina is actually good for different parts of North Carolina. This is not a zero-sum game where I'm in Mecklenburg County, where we might get a lot of, some Fortune 500 headquarters, but those Fortune 500 companies are not going to be setting up the large manufacturing plants that are going to be so important to bring jobs into communities like our more rural areas or those ex-urban areas. And we need people, I think, up in Raleigh and working all across the state that understand this and really inspired me to make this jump to run for this position.
Man, I appreciate that. That's an incredible vision. And, coming here from Eastern North Carolina and rural North Carolina, I just really appreciate you understanding that coalitions and shared prosperity is incredibly important. A little bit about Hope County. We're a bedroom community of Fayetteville and Fort Liberty, growing pretty rapidly and, just benefiting from a lot of the spillover from Fayetteville and Cumberland County in general. And so we're transitioning quickly, a lot of development, a lot of homes. And I think, one of the things I've argued, having been a resident of Cumberland County, is, how do we diversify? How do we use some of that human capital that gets imported from all over the United States to really build the kind of economy that doesn't need a Fort Liberty by itself, that where Fort Liberty is not the lifeline, but just an addition to a very healthy regional economy. What would you, and I say all that to say, a lot of folk here, although we are quickly becoming a urbanish area, we're still very rural, and we still have a lot of the throes and a lot of the trappings of a rural agricultural community. And so as such, you have a lot of Black folk and brown folk who are on the tough and rough end of the labor market. So what would you say to those folk who are going down the ballot and they see your name and they're trying to figure out, all right, how is this guy going to make my life better? How is it that, me as a county chair can go out there and market Braxton Winston? Because I like what you're saying. But, the guys at the barbershop, they want to know, like, how is this guy going to make my life better? And, and I'd ask the question of Josh Stein and Mo Green as well. So I want to ask you first.
Now, I appreciate that question. While the jurisdiction of the Department of Labor and the Commissioner of Labor really does end at the doorstep of the workplace, the needs of workers and the things that affect worker health and safety don't stop there, right? Work doesn't work if you don't have access to affordable childcare, right? Work doesn't work if you don't have safe and affordable housing to go to. Work doesn't work if you live in the digital divide or if you don't have access to transportation options to get from home to work. So these are important things. And again, to kind of get back to hit that question and go back to the question that you asked me earlier, when I was on Charlotte City Council, I had a platform of building a more equitable, accessible, and interconnected Charlotte, right? Mm-hmm. And what I came to really understand at the real square root of all of those things of building more equitable, accessible, interconnected communities is a worker's ability to have a job, right? And to be ready for the jobs that are coming tomorrow so that they get the training. And what we had in Charlotte is that we were a very segregated city. And that our segregation was intentional because it lived in the policies of our city, right? The way our zoning was set up that cut neighborhoods off from opportunities like jobs, right? The way we were investing our money in, or not investing our money in, economic development of industries that could provide jobs, but we were ignoring it for shinier things, right? So you being in this department, being in this position, using that bully pulpit of the Commissioner of Labor, I can implement this whole worker approach and work across the Council of State with folks like Mo Green, with the Governor's Office, with the General Assembly, but also work with county and municipal governments, as well as the private sector and service providing organizations to provide comprehensive policy solutions, right, that are going to secure workforces that are needed for today and ensure that we have workforces that are being prepared for the jobs of tomorrow. So places like Hope County, as you said, that are growing, that have a changing identity, or might just be reimagining what that identity is, has playbooks that they can look to. Again, through partly that's how you build those playbooks, is understanding what's going on, what's working and what's not working in different parts of town. So those things can be implemented, and your communities can be self-determinant on the types of policies that are necessary, and how we in government can be a useful tool as you guys decide what your vision is and how to implement it.
Wow. Grand slam. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Well, so, on the positive news front, it was a pretty good week for labor in the United States. There was the big UAW organization vote in Tennessee. So shout out to our neighbor for that. The getting rid of the non-compete rules from the Biden administration, among other sort of regulatory wins. That's all great. But I think you've already sort of alluded to the reason. But what do you think makes it so difficult for labor to organize in the South? Why do you think, you're seeing rollbacks of child labor laws in Arkansas, of worker protections in Florida? How do you think about these challenges, and what can we do as a state to keep going in the correct direction towards worker protection, childcare support, and avoid some of the pitfalls that we're seeing other southern states fall into?
Well, I think again, this is another reason why I stepped into this position to run for this position. I think we as Democrats in North Carolina have kind of written off some of these council of state positions, right? We haven't paid as much attention to them, where the Republicans, after 2008, they concentrated on dog catcher up. And when you don't invest in these campaigns, you take away the opportunity to get in front of people, to get in front of workers and talk about these things, right? Honestly, some of these labor issues should not be partisan, but they certainly are political, right? I think any worker out there believes that they should get a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. That workers should have access to water, right? That workers that working in high heat conditions should be able to take a break and shouldn't be punished if they decide to do. Those are things that we weren't necessarily talking about day in and day out. Like, I don't think people really understand that in North Carolina, you can be fired with just cause for doing any of the above that I said, for telling your employer, hey, it's too hot. I don't feel good. I'm going to take a break, get some water, cool down, and come back. He could say, no, I didn't tell you could take a break, and fire you, right? These are things that we're not talking about. So we're not controlling the narrative, right? So I think that's first and foremost, is to go to communities, whether they be large and small, whether honestly they're Republican, Democrat, or unaffiliated, and talk about workers' rights, right? All work is dignified, right? All work, if it wasn't necessary, it wouldn't exist. So workers should be treated well, and therefore businesses will thrive, right? The other side has a narrative that for some reason, talking about workers' rights and standing up for workers' rights is something scary and something is going to hurt businesses. And that's just not true. We know most businesses, the largest line item is their labor. And there's a premium on new labor. So there's an interest to have good workers stay in those jobs that are well trained and get educated, because it helps businesses bottom line. It helps build communities and helps make families thrive. So first and foremost, we've got to get out in front and control the narrative about workers' rights. And this is, again, what I'm trying to do during this campaign and over the next following 4 years as your next Commissioner of Labor.
Man, that's fantastic.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, the narrative piece is so important. And, in my work, and I'll get to a question around that later, but you mentioned controlling the narrative. I really appreciated your comment on how workers' rights and workers' protection should not be a partisan issue, certainly political, but not a partisan issue. And I think that's, we've discussed hyperpartisanship in a couple of other episodes. But narratives.
I would like to hear the Republican that says I shouldn't get paid for the work that I do. But you have a Republican Party that is advocating for rules that allow that.
Bingo. Absolutely. And I think that speaks to a lot of their ideology. Might is right, and the strong man wins, and that's very detrimental, very, very, very problematic. You mentioned narrative. Tell us a story. We know that every candidate has heard a story from someone who has encountered maybe wage theft, maybe being unjustly fired. Share a story, because I know our listeners would love to hear, of course, with all the anonymity required, but they'd love to hear, a story of why this race is important and why you need to be the next Commissioner of Labor.
Well, where do we start, man? Where do we start? I mean, how it goes, first, like I had a conversation with a small business owner in Nashville, right, who owns some scrap yards. And they've been trying for 4 months to get a voluntarily occupational safety and health inspection for their scrapyard. They haven't got responded to in 4 months, right? They haven't got this is a voluntary issue, and if something goes wrong, they will be held accountable. So again, it speaks to the need for a responsive service providing organization. But I was able to talk to some folks down in Mexico, right, who are farm workers, are migrant farm workers. In North Carolina, the largest part of our economy is still our agricultural sector and our ag services sector. And a lot of that gets done by migrant workers, particularly on H-2A visas. And there's an incredible amount of wage theft, human trafficking that occurs in this space. We hear a lot of talk about immigration, but a lot of those folks that are yelling and screaming from a policy perspective about the need for closing the border and whatnot are actually business owners that have business models based in illegal immigration. These folks are showing up thinking that they have paperwork, right, to go to a particular farm under these H-2A visa programs. But when they get over the border, they are taken somewhere completely different, right? And out of compliance with what they were sold. And there's a whole system, a legal system that allows for this, but people are taking advantage of it. And again, this impacts workers, this impacts our communities, but it also impacts business owners who are following the rules. So I think it's very important that we have a Department of Labor that is, again, working with businesses, but also working with different levels of government to work with the U.S. Department of Labor, to work with folks that are on the ground to deal with these important labor issues that directly affect other policy and legal issues that are so important to our communities all across the state.
So let me get this right, because you got to run this back for me. That was masterful. But what you're telling me is that this issue of immigration that I think is very racially charged, very intentionally racially charged, is actually being exacerbated by the very people rallying up their political base because they themselves are business owners.
Absolutely.
And I tell you what, say
Absolutely.
it again for the people in the back.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
We have a huge issue of human trafficking that is shrouded in, around this issue of illegal immigration. And, you think about it, those folks who are coming here just to do the work, they don't know their rights. If they don't understand how to stand up for themselves, they aren't going to do it. So like I said, all work has dignity. Every worker has rights. And it is important that folks understand how to utilize the tool that is the Department of Labor to ensure that all of our communities are working in healthy and safe environments and that their rights are being stood up for wherever that work is done.
Thanks, man. That's incredible.
So you were talking about, the work you would do with the the Commissioner of Agriculture, Secretary of Agriculture. We were lucky enough to have Dr. Tabor on the podcast about a month ago now. And I think it's a toss up between, who are, no offense to our other great guests, but, who's really still on the show between you and her. Again, as Hope County being a little bit more on the rural side, a little more on the agricultural side, I know y'all have an event together coming up soon. But, if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit about what that work has looked like, what that coordination would look like once you're both elected this November.
Well, I think all of our council of state is trying to find ways to work together, right? So, I mean, you just think about the agriculture issue, right? We need to work with the Commissioner of Agriculture to, again, stand up for agricultural workers' rights and their health and safety, because they actually do operate under different rules than some of the labor laws that we're used to in other places. But yeah, in the places where there are wrongdoing, you want to work with the Attorney General, for instance, to the Commissioner of Labor has incredible policing powers that you can work with the Attorney General as well as local district attorneys to take civil or criminal actions against people that are doing wrong. You're going to want to work with your auditor to look at the way contracts are being bid on, to see, are there folks being taken advantage of bids and misclassifying workers and therefore taking advantage and not doing right by our tax dollars. These are things that we all are talking about right now as Council of State candidates on how we can work, not just together on to get everybody elected, but as William asked, what are we going to do for the people of North Carolina? So I'm grateful that we have an actual crop scientist running for the Commissioner of Labor, somebody who has worked as farm labor for decades and understands that. And I look to learn a lot more. Hey, I'm a city guy. I'm a city guy. I know and understand the condition of workers, but I would not claim to be an expert at every industry. So I look forward to working with Dr. Tabor throughout this campaign and all of my Council of State folks as we look to provide comprehensive solutions for all North Carolinians.
I really appreciate. No, go ahead, Tyson.
I was going to say, someone with agricultural experience, being this, in the agriculture department, and someone who works for a living, being in the charge of labor. What, do you want a teacher or educator involved at the Secretary of Education? Where does it stop? Where does it end?
How radical is that, right?
Oh, it's insane.
I think it's radical and awesome.
I love it. I'm really encouraged by hearing, this cooperative approach for the Council of State candidates. I think that it can only serve to invigorate and educate folk as to what these folk can do for them on a day-to-day basis. So it's no secret. I tell everyone who I come in contact with that I work for a renewable energy advocacy nonprofit focused on the equitable transition to renewable energy. So I'm super excited about solar, wind, and all the great things that are coming along with it. Couple that with the incredible investments from the Biden administration in renewable energy. One, to right the wrongs of this investment, but also to secure our supply chain and make sure that China is not hogging up all of the battery sourcing and the solar panel production. So we're really excited about this. How do you see, a lot of times in communities where I'm talking to folk about renewable energy and solar, they're trying to make ends meet. And so solar isn't, a priority. And so we're sort of trying to figure out how to wrap around all the things, affordable housing, food insecurity issues, things like that, into a really revitalization of entire forgotten communities. How do you see the nature of work, the opportunities of work changing in light of what's really a burgeoning new economy? I think a new green economy. We're going to have to take some folk kicking and screaming into the future here. But yeah, how do you see the energy transition being an opportunity for labor and for businesses here in the state?
Well, you're right. We're at a very disruptive time from a technological standpoint in many different industries, whether it be energy, transportation. Hey, even look at what AI is doing in my industry in production, I think this is an opportunity. When you talk about ends meet, all of this disruption is going to mean jobs, right? And again, we need to make sure that our people are set up to take advantage and have the skill sets to take advantage of the job. So those jobs come here and people can use that as tool. So I think there are two ways you really work. And this goes back to the last topic that we were talking about collaboration, right? Well, one thing I've learned is that every North Carolinian lives within 30 miles as the crow flies to a community college. And our public high schools, in large part, in many parts of our state, are the workforce development centers, right? So we need to ensure that we're working with our public instruction and our community colleges, and the Commissioner of Labor sits on the community college board for the state, to make sure that we are providing the types of workforce development programs. So folks coming out of high school or folks that are transitioning into second or third careers throughout their life are prepared for these tools or have the opportunity to prepare for these jobs that are coming. And I think that really is going to be key to do that, whether you're talking about solar panel or wind or investing in public transportation in different communities, or just changing the way in Charlotte, we're a financial town, the way fintech is changing the way financial services have been and are going to be offered. We need to make sure that, yes, we are a destination for folks that want to do this and come set up, but we need to make sure that our people that are here right now are able to take advantage of it. And that has to be a focus of our workforce development, of priorities and goals. And again, that is squarely under the responsibilities of the Commissioner of Labor. And again, one of the reasons why I decided to run for this.
One last follow-up, and I'll kick it to Tyson. I really see, man, now that you've mentioned this Council of State candidate collaboration, I can just definitely see your message syncing up with Mo's message, syncing up with Tabor's message. This is incredible. We hope maybe we can get to maybe an hour or two of all three of you here in Hope County.
I love to do it, especially as my battery is dying. And
Oh yeah, we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up.
they're going to call me back to work in a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're
Well,
good. You're good.
I guess the last thing we'll say, is there anything you want to kind of go out on, close out with before
No,
your battery dies?
Yeah, I look forward to getting out to Hope County, and I encourage everybody to go to votebraxton.com, sign up to follow our campaign, hit that contribute button if you can. Every bit helps. And we really, again, focus on becoming the number one state for businesses and workers. Look, I bet a lot of people that are going to be watching this podcast are already planning on voting. Look, I want to get every voter and excite everybody that is used to voting, but we need to make sure we are bringing our brother, our sister, our cousin, our neighbor,
That's right.
who is less in tune to what is going on, who definitely doesn't have an idea of what the council of state is. Make them listen to this podcast. Make them sign up to my campaign or any other candidate's campaign that you feel strongly against. Let's get involved, and most importantly, let's get out and vote on November 5th. I'm Braxton Winston, and I am grateful and humbled to be your nominee for North Carolina's next Commissioner of Labor.
All day, man. Knocked it out. That's incredible. So to our listeners, thank you for listening in. These are the incredible leaders that we have on deck. We wanted to bring them to you first. So we'll be kicking this out to all of our listeners. And so be sure to follow us for more discussions, policies, and people shaping our future. Until next time, stay informed and keep striving for a better tomorrow. Take care.
Bye,